We come, ladies and gentlemen, to our third, but by no means least, panel discussion of this afternoon's conference. It gives me really great pleasure to introduce this topic with some really, not that nobody else has been, but some really distinguished guests and experts to join us with us on a part of the discussion that I think we started to get into in the last session, the framework, the EU framework that we can have between the EU and Ukrainian agriculture in order to achieve some of the things that we've been talking about. Joining us online is Cédric Benoit. He is the Secrétaire Général Adjoint of AGPB. Great to have you with us, Cédric, as always. Max Schulman needs very little introduction. Finnish farmer, well known in this town. Max, it's always great to see you in person, but today great to have you with us virtually. Andrei Deacon, Director of the Ukrainian Agri Council, great to have you with us. And first, Vincent Cordonnier, Deputy Head of Unit for Neighbourhood Enlargement and Pre-Accession Assistance at DG Agri. Vincent, I'm going to give you the floor to begin with, just to share with us some of your opening perspectives on this topic. Obviously, we've heard a lot already in the first 2 or 3 panels, but if you can start to draw that together for us, and what this means to you in DG Agri, in the EU, and how we begin to put that framework together. Vincent, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, and good afternoon to all. Very happy to be here. I'm indeed in the unit in DG Agri working on enlargement. And in this introductory speech, I'd like to guide you through the enlargement process and what it may mean for the EU and for Ukraine. So you may have noticed that we are very close to the official launch of the negotiations with Ukraine. Last Friday, the member states ambassadors in the COREPER agreed provisionally on the negotiating framework, which is a prerequisite to then have the intergovernmental conference with Ukraine and with Moldova, and that should take place next Tuesday, actually, so just in a week. And that will be the moment when the negotiation starts in earnest. Then first we will have what we call the screening exercise. So after the presentation by the EU of the EU legislation, we will have Ukraine presenting their legislation and to which extent they are already aligned to the EU law. There will then be a report by the Commission, a decision at some point to open the negotiations on the different chapters. You may know that agriculture is one chapter. Within one cluster, there are 6 clusters, 35 chapters. And then, ultimately, we will come to the point where there may be a last intergovernmental conference and a decision and a conclusion. And that will require unanimity among member states, the current member states. There are some fundamental principles that will have to be respected during these negotiations. And one is that an enlargement process is merit-based and it is reversible. So until the moment everything is agreed, in a way nothing is agreed. But also for the accession to take place, both the EU and Ukraine and the candidate countries need to be ready. So what does that mean for Ukraine? For Ukraine, that means that they will have to integrate the EU acquis. So that's the first step of these negotiations. When we review the legislation, they will have also to foster the competitiveness of their agricultural sector, and they will have to enhance their administrative capacity. Aligning the legislation, this is about geographical indications, of course, organic farming legislations, and also ultimately the capacity to develop and implement CAP strategic plans. We're not yet there. There's no need to rush to have CAP strategic plans. But in a way, Ukraine has done the first step, which is to develop a strategy for their agricultural sector and their role and for rural development. That's a strategy that's been presented last week, and that should be adopted in the autumn. And in a way, it's comparable to a SWOT analysis identifying the priorities. And of course, one of the difficulty for a candidate country is that it's a moving target, this alignment, because the EU legislation continues to evolve. And as you know, we expect proposal for the future CAP in the autumn next year. So we will see to which extent the CAP will have changed by then. That was aligning on and integrating the EU acquis. Then there's the competitiveness. We've discussed that at large today. The Ukrainian agriculture is very competitive, export-oriented, but that's very true for a certain segment of the sector. But there are also small and medium farms that will also require an upgrade, improving their competitiveness to be in a position to integrate the single market. Then administrative capacity. The CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, is a shared management. It's implemented in a shared management way. So what does that mean? It means that the member states are responsible for paying the farmers, controlling the farmers, and as such, they need some essential tools, structures, and that takes time to put that in place. We have the experience with other candidate countries that benefit from the EPARD program, which is a pre-accession program, and it took, in average, 3 years to implement the basic structures. They will also need reliable statistics, because that's a prerequisite also to design a proper policy. So the message there is that it will not be easy and it will take time. It will be gradual also, and in a way, Ukraine is already close to the EU, not only geographically, but we have this association agreement, we have the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, we had the ATMs, so we have already the solidarity lines, so we have already a kind of a close connection, and that will gradually, we may expect that it will gradually increase. The EU also has instruments to support candidate countries, and we will certainly make good use, and Ukraine will make good use of those instruments. Now, so that was for Ukraine. What does it mean for the EU? For the EU, it means that it will need what I would call the agricultural policy, which is enlargement-proof. So that means that we will have to review the policy. That's something that has been announced for the first semester 2025. So bear with me. We are not going to conclude today, but just a few key messages that I would like you to hear. One is that the Common Agricultural Policy is already capable of accommodating diverse forms, diverse types of agriculture. We have already in the EU 27 very diverse types of agriculture, from very big farms in Czech Republic, east of Germany, to very small farms in many other countries. We also have tools to face or to answer, address potential challenges. What I have in mind there is, in particular, how to manage direct payments. What if Ukraine would be entitled to pay direct payments to big farms? There we also have the capping, which is something that can be used. We have the redistribution mechanism. So just to say that the current CAP is already well equipped. And in the past, in previous enlargement, there were changes to the CAP when it was necessary, and we can be sure that solutions will be found. Now, a word on the budget. The budget It's been clearly announced in the communication on pre-enlargement in March that enlargement should be factoring the reflections leading to the next multi-annual financial framework. And of course, such reflections are all-encompassing. And this enlargement is only one dimension under consideration. Tassos mentioned the defense instrument, the need to finance weapons. There's also climate transition, social fairness, you name them. So you have many priorities, and enlargement will be taken into account, but it's only one of the elements. Now, when you come to the CAP and the budget, you may have seen some figures floated around on the potential impact of Ukraine joining the EU, what it would mean for the CAP, what it would mean for the overall budget. Some of these figures were dramatic, but there's no need to dramatize. There are, in the past and in the future, there were appropriate arrangements that were considered to alleviate the budgetary impact. And we can anticipate that the same will be done this time. As you know, the MFF proposals are expected by July 25, so that will come quick as soon as we have a new commission in place, basically. A few words to conclude. So again, enlargement negotiations will take time, and that will provide to both EU and Ukraine time to get ready for accession and also to gradually get closer. When Ukraine is a member of the EU, and that's, again, a link to what Tassos was saying, we can expect that the EU will become a bigger global player in terms of role on the global market. We may also expect that the fact to have a wider geographical area will help to potentially compensate when you have some climate events in one part of the EU, that you would still have a good crop in another part. But of course, you may also have some, let's say, negative impacts in some member states. But that's very challenging to assess them at this stage because there are many uncertainties. And I'll just name a few. First, the production capacity of Ukraine in the future. The improvement of governance and the impact of the reforms that are currently carried out by Ukraine, possible support that Ukraine will receive in the coming years, the evolution of the agricultural sector in both the EU and Ukraine in the coming years, because we know that agriculture is an evolving sector, and of course the evolution of the CAP. So with those elements, I will stop and looking forward to the discussion.
So thank you very much indeed for that. Two follow-up questions, if I may, and I don't wish to put you on the spot, so please don't feel obligated to answer. The first one is about the accession process itself. I mean, this presumably would be a first to negotiate an accession with a country that is still subject to a conflict. To what extent, as you go through the process, are you adapting the process to take account of that? And the second one is, just try and play back to you what I think I heard you to say in terms of agriculture itself and common agriculture policy, which is that the policy has enough flexibility within it to manage the diversity. And the budget is also, theoretically, has the capacity, or must have the capacity, to take account of not just enlargement in terms of agriculture, but also enlargement in terms of other priorities that the EU will have. I think I heard you say your message, it really is, let's not over-dramatize the situation and potentially trust the process. Is that fair, or do I misunderstand you?
So maybe first, your first question on the country at war. I think that what is certainly, and I of course don't want to speak for Ukraine, but what is certainly a challenge for Ukraine, for a country like Ukraine, which is at war, is to have the capacity, administrative capacity, to engage in these negotiations. There was, again, a cut in the number of people in the actual ministry in Ukraine. They have a very small team in charge of the negotiation process. But at the same time, we see we had the first series of meetings. They came very well prepared. They are certainly very much committed to this exercise. So I would say that on this, I don't think that's such an issue, and we are not adapting our approach. On your second question, I'm not sure I really got it.
So what I think I heard you say is that there is enough flexibility, versatility within the common agriculture policy to be able to adapt to the diversity of farms that we would have, that we have in the European Union, and that we would have with the Ukraine's accession. And equally, on the budget side, there is a factor to take into account of what enlargement might mean for the common agriculture policy budget, the budget as a whole. But there are other factors that the budget will have to take into account as well, defense. So it's not just a Ukraine agriculture story that's relevant to the budget. And I think I heard you say maybe I'm reading too much into what you say, a time for cool heads and not over-dramatization of the situation. And I just wanted to check my understanding of that and also give you the opportunity to profoundly disagree with what I just said.
So maybe first reaction on the CAP. I didn't say that the CAP is sufficiently equipped to integrate Ukraine. What I said, that will be the outcome of let's see the conclusions of this policy review. Yep. That will take place next year. What I said is that it's not that suddenly we should for sure we will need a complete reshuffle or a revolution in the common agricultural policy, because we know that we already have flexibilities, we have already many tools, that the CAP has already evolved a lot in the past decade. So that was my message. Let's see the policy review. Now on the budget, you're right. It's not only the CAP, and it's not only the CAP and the budget, but the figures that were floated around were that suddenly we would need tens of billions just to pay for the actual sector of Ukraine. And of course, suddenly that appears as very threatening. And my message is that there will be, there are, of course, reflections are going on, and there will still be discussions, and I'm quite confident that, we will have solutions.
Perfect. Thanks so much indeed, also for clarifying my own understanding of what I thought I heard you say. I appreciate that. Andre, let's come to you. And just talk perhaps a little bit from your perspective on where you think Ukraine is in terms of meeting some of the requirements of accession, particularly in agriculture. Let's try and keep it focused on agriculture, and the progress that you think you can and will be able to make in the coming months and years.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. Thank you very much for invitation for such interesting conference. I represent Ukrainian Agricultural Council, which is a union which represents 1,400 farmers all over the country. Unfortunately, 200 of them are under occupation, some of them on Ukrainian part, some of them in jails, some of them were killed. And actually, I come this year a few times to Brussels, and what I hear sometimes that in Ukraine, we don't need to help Ukraine, especially in agricultural sector, because they have huge companies, oligarchs, and all that stuff, and so on. And actually, I would like to give you some structure of what is happening in Ukraine, because indeed in Ukraine we have big companies. And for example, Nazar is here, his organization, they represent huge companies, agricultural companies. And it's okay. It's good that we have such companies in Ukraine. But they cultivate only 16% of land. Only 16%. 60%, 60, is cultivated by mid-sized companies. Yes, it's like from 2,000 to 3,000 hectares of land. And you will tell me it's huge companies. It's huge companies for you, but it's not our fault we have such companies. 100 years ago, when we were in Soviet Union, our farmers were killed or sent to Siberia. And they started to build big collective farms in Soviet Union. After collapse of Soviet Union, Ukrainian government told to everyone in Ukraine, you want to be a farmer, please go be a farmer. Only 30,000 people had a desire to be a farmer in Ukraine because we lost that generation of farmers. And it's not our fault, we are as we are. And you need to accept us as we are. And today, extremely important, it was told by Dr. Jill and then Elena Kovaleva about macroeconomical figures. 62% of foreign currency which comes to Ukraine today is from agricultural sector. And if in 2021, you saw the picture from Dr. Jill, more than 10% of GDP of the country were from agriculture. Today, more than 20% of GDP from agricultural sector. Agricultural sector is vital for Ukraine today. Because, for example, for the war, we spent 80 billion euros a year. Half of this money are from you guys. You help us as our partners. But half of the money we earn by ourselves. So for us, it's extremely important not to destroy the system we have today. As maximum, what we feel is that we will export to EU only 20% of what we produce. And our main markets are not a European market, because before the war it was closed. And we were doing quite good, selling to Africa, to Asia, to China. And today it is important not to destroy the system, because after the war Russia will not disappear. It will take time before we start to build processing, before we start to bring Ukrainians back. It will take many years before we will have like 1 to 2% agricultural GDP in the country. So it is extremely important. And I will tell you more. We don't need subsidies. So don't be afraid about budget. Tell your farmers in all your countries, Ukrainian farmers don't need subsidies. We need your support in military, in ammunition. You support us, but just keep it in mind. We managed to build efficient business. Huge company, medium-sized or small farmer. They all efficient in Ukraine without subsidies. And that is our core competence. And when we talk about joining EU, don't be afraid of us, because you have discussed today about protein issue. Yes, we can increase soya production in Ukraine. But also you buy a lot from, for example, rapeseed from Ukraine to produce biodiesel. We can produce up to 10 million tons of sugar in Ukraine and sell it to EU, no problem. There is another potential for both of us, is the dairy sector, for example. In EU, you have no potential to increase your milk production or animal production, keeping in your farms. In Ukraine, no problem. There is a lot of possibility to increase to build farms, to have a big production, processing. So that is a possibility in Ukraine. And what we feel as mid-sized farmers today, because we suffer a lot today because of the war of mining, all these things. I don't want to repeat, everything. But approach to Ukraine, to support Ukrainian farmers today. All donors, food and agricultural organizations, many donors, organizations, they help farmers like up to 50 hectares or up to 100 hectares. That's all. Because they think that other is too big. Big companies, they are quite a structured company, and they have access to international financial institutions, for example, such like EBRD or like IFC, and it's very good for them. But what about mid-sized farmers in Ukraine today? They are in the most difficult situation at this moment. So what I want to say is that we don't ask more for us. We just say if there is some kind of support, or it should be equal. But I have farmers. We have this 1,500 kilometers front line, and I have like many farmers on this edge. And we don't see and we don't believe that the war, but the war will not finish very soon. Russians learning very fast. Russian army is increasing. They're pushing a lot. And actually, Russians have two main approach, like battlefield and food. The gentleman was talking before about like food security is global issue. Climate security or climate changes is global issue. I have one question. War in Ukraine, it's a local issue or it's a global issue? If it's a global issue, then I have a question. I will try to make it as politically polite as possible. But when our border was closed for 1 year and we were not selling to exporting grain or transit through Poland or to Poland, whatever, the grain from Russia was easily going to EU. Only a few weeks ago, it was a decision to put tariffs, to make higher tariffs. And Russia used food not for global food security. They use food as a tool in the war. And actually, from the very beginning, they did very good propaganda about food issue in Africa. That's why Russian food sector is not on the list up to now. And I have only one desire and wish what I would like to raise, because all things are nice. We will join, we will adjust, we will find synergy and so on. But number one, we need to stop the war and we need to win. And the only possible way to stop the war is to take money from Russians. And today, a lot of machinery, equipment, seeds, genetics from EU is still going to Russia. So it's like, we can talk about, it's nice to talk about global security issue, but look at from the perspective of Ukrainian farmer on this situation. When every day, sorry, we have to die, we need to fight. Many members of my organization, actually, they are now in the army. We actually employed by the army as well. We do a lot of military things, which we'll tell you later after the war, but that is very important for all of us today. You will read the history of Russia. You will never stop Russia on a battlefield. We need to stop them by taking possibility for them to produce food. 15 years ago, Russians were importing a lot of food. From Ukraine, from EU, they were importers. For last years, 15 years, they invested billions. They started to build huge farms, processing factories. They were preparing themselves to be food independent. But they depend on your technology. Without your agricultural technology, your machinery, your equipment, they would not be able not only to export, because what happened actually, they blocked Black Sea. For our farmers, disaster for 2 years, we lost everything. But what happened? Russia took our market in China. And they talk with Xi Jinping, sorry, don't think about Ukraine, we will give you food. We have enough grain and we will have more grain and so on. And Ukraine managed to export every month, we export now 8 million tons as it was on the as 2 years ago. And that's actually, we can double our production, no problem. For 2 years, we don't use almost fertilizers, for example. And you know that to compete with Russians on fertilizers, it's not possible because they don't use this economic tools, they just use it as a weapon. They can put high price, down price, and so on. And the main competitor for European farmer today, globally, not Ukrainians, it's Russians. Because for Ukraine, agri-business is business thing. But for Russians, it's not about business. It's about tool by which they use to terrorize the whole global world and so on. And actually, I know that machinery, seed companies, they will lose money if they will stop export to Russian market. But then better to give money which you give us for the war, give this money to this company to compensate them. In 1-2 years, you will see Russian have no food and the war will stop automatically. That's actually our perspective as a farmers union, and actually that's why I'm here today. And thanks again for inviting.
Andrei, thank you. Again, I'll clarify what I think I heard, really two messages. One, we need to do more to constrain Russia's ability to produce and export. And secondly, I think I heard quite a powerful message from you that you don't believe that the European Union, our farmers here, have got anything to fear from Ukraine joining the European Union. Do I understand?
I don't believe what?
I think I heard you say that the message you wanted to convey is that farmers in the European Union don't need to fear Ukraine joining the European Union from an agriculture.
Exactly, but we don't need to do it like this. We need to sit together and think, to have a strategy.
Yeah.
All together, what is best for European farmers and Ukrainian farmers. And let's adjust our agricultural sector. Because not like with sugar, for example. You can no quota, we plant a lot of sugar beets, and now we have quotas. And now our country in war, we have bad economy, and we have too much sugar production this year. We will have overproduction, low price for farmer, low price for factory, and so on. So I think it's quite, it's not, I don't blame, but we need to sit together and have a long-term, like 10-year strategy, so your farmers feel comfortable, because what we don't want you to have problems with your farmers because of us, because Russians, they use it. You look at Poland. It's not about prices. Ukraine export is very small. We cannot influence the global price on grain. It's because Russian propaganda. They push, and they will continue to do it. They will not stop. They will do it in France, in other countries where they have strong influence. So we don't want this. It's better to stop any export to EU than to have fight with you, because you really, the countries, you help a lot to us, to our women, our children, your weapon, your money, and so on. So this is more important for us. So in order to stop it, we need to have like working group from Ukrainian, like big companies, mid-size, small size, your different organizations sit together and listen where we will win, where we will make more money. On a farm, for example, dairy sector, on a farm level, we are very efficient. We are more efficient average than, because we have large farms. But on processing side, we are very poor. Because our maximum processor can process 300 tons of milk per day. In Poland, for example, factory can process easily 5,000 tons.
Right.
So there is big potential just to sit together and think here, here, and here, for example. And that's what we can do, because otherwise we will be blind, and this is not right.
Andre, thank you very much indeed. Great insights and pragmatism there from Andre. I wonder if I can bring in, I'll come to you in a second, Cedric at AGPB, if I may, but maybe just start with you, Max. Max Schulman, reflecting on what you heard, both from Vincent in terms of the process and some of the elements that we're going to have to go through, but particularly that last exchange there with Andre about finding a way to understand what we can do together with perhaps a 10-year horizon. What would your perspective be on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for the question. I hope you can hear me well.
Very well.
Thank you very much for a very interesting, panels until now. And this one is also as interesting. No, I tend to agree what Andre was saying. I mean, I think what we really have to do is to look and put Ukraine into EU on paper and see what can we do as a big bloc. What are the potentials there? I mean, we heard today already that part of the grain is finding its way already in, for instance, to Spain. I mean, 53% of the grain exported is already going in there. So in a way, the integration has happened, even if Ukraine is not part of Europe. So we actually have to look at it from that point of view. Maybe there will be some really interesting development possibilities even. Could be that some of our meat production might find its way into Ukraine, where you have easy access to feed, but also have a possibility to set up new factories when you rebuild, etc. So it could be that we can actually start certain processes from the beginning. That's one thing. We have to remember that Europe is both the biggest importer of ag commodities when it looks into, and mainly then we talk about proteins. Here we have already heard it. We have already discussed a bit. There could be even a bigger potential to look into that, to see how this would be able to be the new Europe in the way that we would actually be able to cut quite a bit on our imports on, for instance, soybeans or then oilseeds in general, if it is going to proteins or into the biofuel sector. We also see that Ukraine will also have to change their agriculture, as we heard in the beginning, from food maybe more into energy. That will also be a thing that we do not know anything about today. So I would say that we should look into a 5 + 5 + 5, 15-year perspective, where we would be able to have in between each of the pluses, we would look into and see what needs to be adjusted. We also know that the cost structure is different in Ukraine than in most of Europe as well. That has to be taken in consideration. So I mean, there are plenty of possibilities. And let's not forget, once Ukraine is part of Europe, we are one of the biggest exporters, one more time, of wheat into the world market. So we might not be anymore a price taker. We might be a price setter in this. We might be again in a different position on the world market. These are just things to think about. But otherwise, I think that there is a big potential. So I would look at it more like not the glass half empty, but a glass that might become quite nice and full at some stage.
You took the words out of my mouth, Max. I said that I've always known you as a guy that is a glass half full rather than a glass half empty, and you took the words out of my mouth. Thank you for that, Max. We'll come back to you. Cedric, AGPB, your perspective on the same question then?
Do you hear me?
Yep.
Is it okay for you? Yes.
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. Max said a lot of things. This is Max. So I can say I hear my Ukrainian colleague, and what can I say? That Ukraine, for us, has a legitimate right to become a member of the European Union. However, there are two crucial issues for us. Firstly, the tax rate, which will be long. And secondly, even if Ukraine's agriculture sector is bringing itself up to the same level of sustainability as Vincent says, the difference in structure are such that we cannot imagine Ukraine become a member in the same way as, for example, the Eastern European countries did after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Despite this, like Max said, we believe that its integration could make the European Union a food force with influence in the world and not put world food security in Putin's hand. That's what I say.
Cedric, could you just say the first point? I got the point on sustainability. You slightly broke up, at least for me. What was your first consideration?
Yes, I said that we have a high level of sustainability in Europe, for example. In Ukrainian agriculture can use 29 pesticides that we can't use in Europe, for example. We can talk about neonicotinoid, for example, and even if there is the same level of sustainability as European agriculture for the pesticide, for example, there is a very huge difference in structure that there are a competitiveness advantage, for example, and we can be European farmer can be at the same level, with a small farm like mine, for example.
Great. Thanks so much, Cedric. I'm going to come back straight to you on both those points. Andre, you've heard Max, certainly glass half full. Cedric as well, also optimistic. But there are two challenges there that are obvious. One is on sustainability. One is on the structural difference, which may impact competitiveness. Just give us your response on both of those, if you don't mind, in terms of how you'd respond to it from a Ukraine.
Yeah, for me it's very simple. For example, if I want to sell to EU market, I need to follow EU regulations, that's for sure. But you don't need all Ukraine to sell to EU. So if I am a farmer and I want to sell to EU, or a factory which process something they want to sell to EU, they should have a farm in Ukraine who follows EU regulation. If you sell to China, okay, sell to China. In future, yes, but we need for that a transition period. That's for sure, because we cannot switch like that.
Yeah. So how would you respond then to Max's 5+5+5 as a kind of framework for transition? Does it make sense to you?
Yes, of course. And I'm sure that when we start to talk actually on an association level with different countries, we will find a lot of business opportunities for both of us.
Good.
Because your agricultural sector, it's quite, and in Ukraine, we have a lack of people before the war. And now it's even worse. We don't have people who will sit in tractor tomorrow.
Yeah.
We have big demographical issue in Ukraine. You know how millions of Ukrainians today in EU are living. So that's a big issue. So, and we have the same problem as you in EU, that young people, they don't want to work in agriculture. That's why actually we went into education. We have school, we have programs. During the war we do this because we understand that in 5-10 years we will not have enough people to work in agricultural sector. So we also need you need us. And
I'm going to open up to the audience in a second. Vincent, do you want to come in on that, or all clear for you? Okay. We'll go to the audience then. Gilles, you've definitely had a go. I will come to you, I promise. The lady at the back with her hand up who's been waiting very patiently.
Thank you so much. My name is Olga Bilkova. I'm a former member of parliament from Ukraine and currently a senior advisor with FTI Consulting here. So my question will be to the representative of DG Agri. I was quite, happy to hear your comments, very calm procedure of how negotiations will happen, and reassuring that, the European partners, I assume, should not be afraid of Ukraine, too fast becoming member of EU. As a Ukrainian, of course, I want the process be very fast and expedited, and both sides having to benefit from this procedure. I don't think you have the in-depth knowledge like Andrei of how to embrace Ukraine. That's my doubt right now, because with all due respect, all the other countries which were coming on board in EU were very different. Even if you take Poland, which is comparable to us by size, we are in very different circumstances of war, of our agricultural structure, and the history, for that matter, which Andrei explained. So my question is, how do you plan to increase your capacity to understand Ukraine in the coming months? How do you, prepare yourself? Not only Ukrainians have to prepare, and I agree with you, our capacity to negotiate is questionable as well. But how European Commission will prepare itself to do the right negotiations? Thank you.
Vincent?
Well, I would be tempted to say that I do believe that the biggest challenge is on the Ukrainian side, because that's for Ukraine to align to the EU legislation, to integrate the EU acquis, and not the opposite. And for the moment, the main constraint, notably on staff, is on the Ukrainian side. And just to say that, of course, Ukraine is a big challenge also for us to these negotiations. I would just take the example of DG Agri, which is obviously the one I know best. And what I can tell you is that Ukraine, we had one desk officer in charge of Ukraine 2 years ago. And now we have 6 colleagues working on Ukraine. Maybe not all of them full-time. We are in the process of recruiting an additional colleague that is financed through the small part of the Ukraine facility with some budget for that. So we are certainly very much engaged into these negotiations or future negotiations. We certainly want to also better know the situation in Ukraine. So we certainly, we are in contact with many people. We are reading what is now being produced in terms of research about Ukraine. And also we have, the luxury to have colleagues in the EU delegation in Kyiv who are in constant contact with the administration, but also the professional organizations. And this is certainly extremely useful for us to better understand the reality of Ukraine, the situation on the ground. And the good news is that, as you said, it will take time. So I do hope that will allow us to slowly but surely increase our knowledge and understanding of Ukraine.
I might, if I may, play the question back to you. My wife always tells me that when she can't understand what I'm explaining to her, the fault isn't hers because she can't understand it. The fault is mine because I'm not explaining myself properly. As you might imagine, I dispute that significantly. But my question I'm going to play back to you is, what can we do collectively? What can Ukraine do to help the EU understand Ukraine better? And what do you think the EU isn't doing, but should be doing, to understand Ukraine better as well?
I will give you a probably oversimplistic answer, but I want to see Ukrainians working at European Commission. Those who will have appropriate qualifications to explain when the issue is coming to a very technical point, like Andrei was explaining the nature of existence of mid-size farmers. It's quite unique to Ukraine. So you do need to have this institutional capacity to explain historical context, etc. But then Andrei was offering an interesting point. I was surprised myself. He said that we don't need subsidies, but then he said we don't have enough of capacity to rework agricultural produce in Ukraine. So how about we tweak a little bit, we accommodate the need in Ukraine in a very standard procedure for EU. But you have to have people who understand and who are somehow integrated very well into Ukraine to bring this knowledge to you. That's my wish. But maybe I'm overstepping here.
You are neither overstepping nor being unhelpful. You've posed a question that, as you can see on the screen, we've got our two online guests who clearly want to jump in here. So from left to right, Cedric first and then Max. Cedric?
Yes, I would try a comment, please. I think that weakening French and European farmers is not the way to guarantee long-term support for Ukraine. It's very important. We can see actually this in the result of the French election. I think Europe sees the French election now. It could raise a real risk to support for Ukraine. I think that this is a real topic for us.
Cedric, thank you. Max?
Yes, I think that you, Mark, just raised a very important question, and we heard actually also from the Ukrainian side. Sorry, I forgot your name, but exactly how to do it. And I agree. You have to be able to work already at this stage to learn a little bit how the European Union, I mean, at this stage, the Commission is working during a process when you are actually starting to have a reform on the CAP. You should already be integrated partly now already into the process, at least, to learn how to be able to make sure that you will understand the process. That's the first thing. And second thing, how to make sure that you through the process can actually minimize the bureaucracy that might come out of it, because we need to make it more simple than what it is today. I mean, even for us European farmers. And this is not anything against the Commission or anybody. This is just a fact that it is quite a complex system we do have today. And in my opinion, the bigger we become, the more simple it has to be. So yes, I agree, integrated in there, but at the same time, it's important for the Ukrainian side to see also how much we are actually putting into sustainability thinking, how much we are trying to make sure that we are fulfilling some other of the societal, pushes that are coming in, if it is on greening, if it is on climate change, etc. So I think that it would be very important to see first 5 years in the process, looking how it works, and then starting slowly to implement it in Ukraine, and then start the process from there on. So I think it was a very good question, Mark, in many ways. And I think that if we can fulfill and follow this path, there should be at least a little bit easier transition.
Thanks, Max. Thank you again for the question. We are really running out of time, but Gilles, I'm going to give you an opportunity to put one more question.
I'd like to react to André's remark on agricultural machinery, as you can imagine. So first of all, of course, I don't know what the industry does in detail, because we have 1,300 different companies manufacturing agricultural equipment in Europe. But I can tell you at least one I know very well, which is mine and which is by far the biggest. We burn all the bridges with Russia. We don't manufacture, we don't export. As a consequence, we lost a huge amount of money I cannot disclose here. So, and many did that. So the issue that I can see is that Russia has already some capacity to produce its own agricultural equipment, like combine harvesters with Rostelmash, and they start to import tractors from China. So even we would decide to, well, we took this decision, but others would do, I'm not sure that it will really lead to what you expect. I think that the other angle, since you mentioned that farmers need modern equipment and they cannot compete with Russian farmers who are equipped with modern equipment, I think you need to be able to access to this equipment. That's a way to compete, because the other way, I'm not sure it would be really working. And that's where about subsidies, I welcome your statement about the fact that you don't need subsidies, but you perhaps need tailored support, especially for agriculture equipment. Of course, I'm preaching now for my industry, which is very natural, but I think it makes a lot of sense from what you said, and please feel free to react to what I said. So thank you.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say thank you very much, because I know other equipment and machinery producers in EU who stopped work with Russia, and we really appreciate it, because the problem is that there is no political decision on this question, and this question is not in sanction list. And we know very good what is Russian harvesters and what is Chinese tractors. It's sorry, but it's not equipment.
It's not so.
Sorry to say. You're talking about Russian, this Rosselmash?
Yes,
But they bought the company in Canada many years ago. But in Ukraine, for example, before the war, they tried to sell the equipment in Ukraine, but it's not. It's much cheaper, but it's not competitive with your equipment, with German, with American, with European. It's completely different levels.
That's exactly what I'm telling.
That was just the advertisement that Gilles was looking for. No, I'm
I
joking.
will send you the bill for that.
We're almost out of time. Max, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, very fast. I think that the main thing what we have to remember here is, like we started the whole process out of, we need to make sure that also in the future, Ukraine has the possibility to the ports. They have to have the ports at the Black Sea. They have to have the facilities working. We need to make sure that when we talk about equipment, I think that we should even more talk about the loading, the storage, etc. inside Ukraine, on farm level, etc. at this stage. For sure, also the equipment needed to farm the land. But I think as important or even more important is actually to rebuild the infrastructure so that the real flow of the grains actually would then be out to the world market, like we already heard. And I think that this is something that we have to keep all the time in mind. And also actually our support should be in that, to keep the harbors.
I just want to make a very small comment. Many years ago in Ukraine, we were deciding what software to use on our dairy farms. There are two producers, one Dutch one, it's a Uniform Agri, and American one, Dairycomp. It's a software to manage the big dairy farms. When we talked with US, because they have big farms, they told us that you should go to our Russian distributor and work with them. And we said no. Then we talked with, and now Ukraine is using Dutch software. So one day you switch off American software on Russian farms, they will all die. So to destroy Russian dairy sector is like that. And it comes everywhere. We can talk about each sector and each segment, and it can be done like this. It's only a question of political, because those companies, for example, not like yours, but other companies who sell tractors to Russia, what is the difference between them and North Korea, for example? It's the same weapon for us. Sorry.
Let me try and bring this to a close now with maybe a final question to all three of you, and then I'll perhaps let Vincent just offer any final remarks or observations on our discussion. For you, Andrei, a year from now, what's the most important thing that we can get done to support the dialogue between the EU and Ukraine to advance our understanding of each other's agriculture?
We need to meet more often and have discussions and have these interactions. And actually, in Ukraine, what I agree with the lady who put a question, we have actually on our organization, we start to hire for last few months a lot of experts on different directions to be prepared to join EU, because we don't want just to translate from English to Ukrainian and then to make it as a law. So we need to have experts, and we start to hire those experts, and we need our experts to get in contact with experts from DG Agri, for example, and to have this normal communication before we start to do some real steps.
Perfect. Cedric and then Max. What do we need to get? Most important thing to get done the next year?
Victory.
Victory.
Better this year, of course.
Yes, I think we need to exchange, to hear each other, and okay, to meet you in Ukraine or in Europe.
Great, thank you. Max?
Yes, I think, this type of discussions that we have had today helps already, but I think we have to even more discuss farmer to farmer. We have to be able to discuss also their legislator to legislator, etc. So, we need more knowledge transfer, but at the same time, we also need best practices to be discussed in between the different parties and continue this type of exchange what we are having today. Because this is a very good beginning in the way at least we will be able to find from here which are the next topics, which are maybe the bottlenecks, etc. So thank you for organizing this.
Thank you, Max. Vincent, any final remarks, reflections on the debate?
Just as a final remark, as we have said already, it will take time. It will not be easy. From our side, from the EU side, we have to do our homework, which is to get prepared to have the policy and a budget that is fit for the enlargement. But definitely, I think the biggest challenge is on the accessing countries, the candidate countries, because what they have to do is massive. And especially when you are a country at war, it's even a bigger challenge. So we will be there to support them. We'll certainly meet, we'll certainly exchange, but there is a lot to be done on their side too.
Very small remark. Yeah, many years ago, Europeans were afraid of Ukrainians. It was very difficult for us to get visas. Like some years ago, no more visas. Now we have millions of Ukrainians in EU, and what? Is it a problem for you? I think for many countries it's a good thing because of the demographic issues.
Yeah.
So that would be the same when Ukraine will join EU. We are normal people.
Here. I'm tempted to point out my own nationality, but I won't.
Say some thank you note. Yeah, because I'm the last semi-representative here, and it's a co-event. So I'd just like to congratulate you all for organizing this, especially Emmanuel was really put under stress by me and some others. You are an outstanding moderator, and that's why we call on you. Congratulations to the FFA, to the SEMA team who is still with us, and also to Yellow. We are absolutely pleased by this event. It's a great success. Thank you very much for putting it together.
You're most welcome. Gilles, thank you very much indeed. Thank you to all of you, to our panelists.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.